Got a Bible this morning. I'd like to invite you to open with me to the book of 1 Kings. 1 Kings chapter 18. This event in history starts at a place called Mount Carmel. It's one of my favorite passages of the Bible. And this week as I was studying, some weeks are hard, some weeks are not. Some weeks God just gives you a message and you just got it all over it. Sometimes they're just right there, it just makes it easy for you. And some weeks it's like pulling teeth. So you just got to hunt for it and find it. And this type of week had been that way, and a couple of events happened that kind of turned me toward this because not only is it one of my favorite passages, there's just so much truth in it. So if you'll find 1 Kings chapter 18, find verse 20, and give you a little background coming up to here, the nation of Israel or Samaria, if you want to say, had been in a famine and in a drought. There was hard times going on everywhere. It was not an easy time. And God had told Elijah to go to King Ahab and make a pretty prophetic statement. But in verse 20 it says, "So Ahab summoned all the people of Israel, all the prophets to Mount Carmel. And then Elijah stood in front of them and said," and then I want you to hear what he said to them. Keep in mind, there's thousands of people standing around, okay? There's all these people standing. And he's brought them all in. It's a famine. It's not a good time in the land. He said, "Listen, how much longer will you waver, hobbling between two opinions? If your Lord is God, follow Him. But if Baal is your God, then follow him." And I want you to listen to this next line in this verse because this is so important. It says, "But the people were completely silent." They didn't say a word. Not one person jumped out and said, "Oh, I'm going to follow God." And not one person jumped out and said, "Oh, I'm going to follow Baal." That means all these people that were there were halted between believing in God and Baal. And to give you a little bit of history, even back, and we'll look at this in a minute a little bit more, but when they took Canaan, when they took Israel, he said, "Look, don't take up the gods of the people there. Don't mess with any of that stuff." And here we find, here's the prophet Baal, who was one of those gods. This is years later. So we find that Elijah is saying, "Look, how much longer will you waver? How much longer will you bounce back and forth between two opinions? How much longer will you believe in God and worship Baal? How much longer will you worship Baal and believe in God?" And there's this great imagination story that says if God is here and the world is here, everything in between here is just a gray area, and you can go anywhere you want to. And churches of years gone by, and even up until today, are allowing this to happen, that you can be worldly and still be godly. And it's okay to live in this world, but you got to know who you are. This area between God and the world is not some big gray area. It draws down to a much smaller line that says you're either here or you're here. You can't be both. Okay, and that's exactly what Elijah's proclaiming standing at Mount Carmel. He said, "Look, how long are you going to waver in between God and the world?" Basically. Because Baal is a little g god. He's not really a god. It's something somebody made up. It's in this world. It's worldly. How long are you going to waver between our God and this world? Makes it pretty clear that way, doesn't it? So let me tell you the rest of what happens, just so you know. It says, "Then Elijah said to them, I am the only prophet of the Lord who is left." Okay? "But Baal has 450 prophets. So here we have Elijah, 450 prophets of Baal. "Now, bring 2 bulls. The prophets of Baal may choose whichever one they wish to cut it into pieces and lay it on the wood on their altar, but without setting fire to the altar to it. I'll prepare the other bull and lay it on the wood on the altar, but not set fire to it. Then call on the name of your God, and I will call on the name of the Lord. And the God who answers by setting on fire to the wood is the true God." And all the people that were there agreed, all of them. So then Elijah said to the prophets of Baal, "Hey, you choose first. There are a whole lot of you. Choose one of the bulls, prepare it, put the name of you call on the name of your God, but don't set the fire or the wood, fire to the wood, I guess you should say. Don't light the altar." So they prepared one of the bulls. They placed it on the altar, and they called on the name of Baal from morning until noontime, shouting, "O Baal, answer us." But there was no reply of any kind. Then they danced, hobbling around the altar that they had made. And about noontime, Elijah, and this is one reason I like Elijah, he's kind of sarcastic in a way, but I just like what he did here. It says, about noontime Elijah was mocking them. He started to mock them. He began mocking them. "You'll have to shout a little louder." He said he scoffed. For surely he is a God. Perhaps he's just daydreaming. Or maybe he's relieving himself. Maybe he went to the bathroom. Or maybe he's away on a trip. Or maybe he's asleep and needs to be woke up. This is one man, okay? 450 prophets of Baal doing all this. They're shouting, they're hollering, they're jumping around, dancing around. And here's Elijah mocking them. So they shouted louder and followed their normal custom. They started cutting themselves with knives and swords until blood gushed out. They raved all afternoon until the time of evening sacrifice, but still there was no sound, no reply, no response. So then Elijah called to the people, "Come over here." They crowded around him as he repaired, I want you to catch that word, he repaired the altar of the Lord and that had been torn down. He took 12 stones, one to represent each of the tribes of Israel, and he used the stones to rebuild the altar in the name of the Lord. And then he dug a trench around the altar, enough to hold about 3 gallons. He piled wood on the altar, cut the bull into pieces, and laid the pieces on the wood. But he didn't stop there. He said, "Fill 4 large jars with water and pour the water out over the offering of the wood." Keep in mind, they were in a famine, a drought. Water was precious. After they had done that, he said, "Look, do the same thing again." And when they had finished, he said, "Now do it a 3rd time." And so they did as he had said. The water ran down the altar and it even filled the trench. Any of you ever burnt wet firewood? Doesn't work real well, does it? At the usual time for the offering and the evening sacrifice, Elijah the prophet walked up to the altar and prayed. He just prayed. "O Lord, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, prove today that you are God in Israel, that I am your servant. Prove that I have done all this at your command. O Lord, answer me. Answer me so these people will know that you are our, O Lord, our God, and that you have brought them back to yourself." He didn't yell, didn't holler, he didn't cut himself. He just prayed. And it says immediately, at the end of that prayer, the fire of the Lord flashed down from heaven. It burned up the young bull, the wood, the stones, and the dust. It even licked up all the water in the trench. And when all the people saw it, they fell down on the ground and cried out, "The Lord, He is God. Yes, the Lord is God." Then Elijah seized all the prophets of Baal. "Don't let a single one escape," he said. So the people seized them all, and Elijah took them down to the Kishon Valley and killed them there. Pretty interesting story, isn't it? There's a lot of stuff happened in a short amount of time, wasn't it? And the people were completely silent when Elijah threw that question to them. A lot of people that were torn between to and fro, wasn't there? See, Israel, from that time, God had called them His chosen people, a peculiar nation, and that influenced, Israel really influenced the culture of the world toward God. And when they came to the land of promise, they were taken, or told not to take the customs and the cultures that were in that nation. And God warned them that they were not to follow false gods and not to be worshiping them with their neighbors. And influenced by the nations around them rather than influencing them, Israel had a long history of being torn between worship the true God and these false gods. And they wanted both. They wanted their cake and they wanted to eat it too. And they wanted God to help them in their time of need, but if they didn't need God at the moment, they wanted to do what they wanted to do. They wanted to do what was in the world and the worldly things. They were torn between God, that when I get in trouble, I need my God, but when I'm not in trouble, I just need to do what I want to do. And you can slowly and surely see this gray area that's in between God and the world that's shaping up. You can slowly see that it's easy to get caught up and know who God is and yet still be very worldly. Be one way on Sunday and another way on Monday. Y'all have heard that preached before. You can see where it'd be really easy to get all this mixed up together, can't you? Same thing happened to Israel. They got caught up in not knowing who God was. This is the same Israel that saw all the miracles that God had done, all the things He had brought them through to get them where they are. The same Israel, these stories were handed down from generation to generation to generation, but they were forgetting who God was. Did you notice that the altar of the Lord was torn down? It was not even there. It was where it used to be. He had to rebuild that altar with 12 stones. Did you notice that? And I want you to look in your own life this morning, because I want you to see that when the world gets in you, it tears your altar to God down. It has to be repaired. It has to be put back. It has to be that sacrifice made on that altar. And you think, well, I don't know if I'm ready to make a sacrifice or not, brother. I don't know if I can sacrifice. Look, you're going to have to sacrifice some things to serve the Lord. You can't have your cake and eat it too. It's a very fine line. Jesus even says, look, you're either hot or you're cold. There's no lukewarm in here. You're either on God's side or the world's side. You can't be on both. Simple as that, isn't it? But yet we still want to dibble-dabble between the two. And I love Elijah says, look, you're hobbling between two opinions. You're bouncing back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. You have God when you need Him. You have the world when you don't need God, right? Same thing Israel was doing. And I want you to look at what took place. The prophets of Baal, they cried out. They cried out. They got to the point where they had to shout a little louder. And then they got to the point, well, maybe if we cut ourselves, it says what they were accustomed to. They were hurting themselves, trying to get their God to pay attention to them. Never answered. Not one time. Because there is no other God. But Elijah simply walks up to that altar, says a short prayer, and God answers it just like that. Now, I want you to see that picture this morning. I want you to put that in your mind. I want you just to see it. James 1:8 says, a double-minded man is unstable in all of his ways. And you can literally say a double-minded man falls apart in all his ways. Along with much of that bad thinking that this has come down, I think from the last 400 years, it's come from the idea of this split living from the churches. That you can be one way on Sunday and another way on during the week. You can live how you want to during the week as long as you go to church on Sunday. It makes you a good person, right? And we go to church on Sunday, makes everything okay. That's not how God designed it. That's not why He made you the way you are. God has placed you where you are for a reason. That movie last night that we watched says, look, God does not make mistakes. He has put you somewhere where you can serve, where you can be a godly influence on somebody. He's put you somewhere where people could see Him in you. He doesn't make mistakes. He made a masterpiece. He made you. And what He's done is He's put you somewhere you could serve. And He said, look, don't take after the gods of your fathers. Don't take after the gods of your forefathers. Worship me. I'm the one who will be there to help you. I'm the one that you can call upon. I am the one. I am. You know what He told Moses? So let me throw this out here to you this morning. Maybe you're twixt between two opinions. Maybe you don't even realize it. Maybe you don't even realize how good God really is to you. You know what I think? I think we get so caught up in the world, and this world's traveling so fast that we miss the things that God's put in our lives. I told this morning, me and my wife went on our first long motorcycle trip. When I bought my first motorcycle, she wouldn't even ride with me. She says, not till you get good on that thing, I'm not getting on it. And we borrowed my dad's Yamaha. We didn't even take my motorcycle. I think I'd sold mine. We took my dad's Yamaha and we headed out across Arkansas into Missouri. We went to Branson and Eureka Springs, and we loved Eureka Springs. That was the neatest place. But the whole trip, the first 45 minutes was interstate. And after that, it was all 2-lane highways. Okay? The first 45 minutes, we had to go down the interstate to get off to go up to Dyersburg. So we did. In that first 45 minutes, we ran 70 miles an hour, and all we saw were cars and trucks. Okay, and asphalt. But when we got off of that interstate and hit that 2-lane highway, we started noticing things. We noticed things that we saw. We noticed houses. Oh, wow, look at that. That's beautiful. Small towns. We stopped. Look at this little store. Look at this little restaurant. And we stopped and we'd visit and get off and get back on and ride some more. We'd see animals, all kinds of things. We saw some animals we didn't want to see. We were in the Mark Twain National Forest. Anybody ever heard of that? I'd never heard of it till we entered it. And we almost ran out of gas. And we were talking about stopping and just sleeping on the side of the road, because if we run out of gas, that's all it was. 50 miles of nothing but woods, okay? We topped a little hill and there's a leaf going across the road. The closer I got to that leaf, I realized it wasn't a leaf. as a spider. It was that big. And I told her, I said, I am not sleeping in this forest. That thing would drag a man off and eat him. Big fuzzy legs. I mean, we saw all kinds of stuff. It was beautiful. And we finally made it out to the backside, and there was a little gas station there. We got gas, and it was a great trip. But one thing we realized on that trip is when you're traveling so fast you don't see what's going on around you, you're missing the things that God has put in your life. You are missing the blessings that He has put before you, but you're going so fast, and the path of destruction is so wide. Why do you think Satan says, look, if I can get you so busy that you will miss the things of God, I've got you. I've got you. And those little 2-lane roads, you know what? We saw more neat stuff. We just slowed down a little bit and just started taking it in. Isn't that the way life needs to be? Shouldn't we just slow down and say, look, I want to see the things that God's put around me and enjoy life that God has given me. And not be so caught up with going so fast and doing so much that we miss those things. Elijah's telling these guys, look, you can't be two places at once. You can't serve God and serve Baal. You can't serve God and serve the world. You can't live for God and live for the world. You can't. I'll share with you a couple of scriptures about that. There's some really good ones in here. Luke 16:13 says, listen, no servant can serve two masters. And this is why. He explains it. For either he will hate one and love the other, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other. And he says you cannot serve God and mammon. And mammon, a lot of people translate that as money, and I completely understand that. But you can't serve God in this world either. It just doesn't work. It's not the way He designed us. That's not the way He made us. That's not who He wants us to be. What He wants you to be is a reflection of Him. He wants you to be something so beautiful that when people look at you, they say, what do you have? It's not money, it's not stuff, it's not anything else. What is that makes you different? They want to know when you face adversity, how you can smile through it because you already know who's on the other side of the adversity. They want to know how you handle it. Don't think they're not watching either. When you go through a hard time, they're watching you like a hawk to see how you handle it. Because if you claim to be a Christian, you should go through it smiling. Is it easy? Absolutely not. Do we make mistakes? Oh, yes. Most definitely we make mistakes. But the thing is, we know who to go to get forgiveness of those mistakes. We know who to get on our knees and cry out to. We know who's got this. We know who's got our back. We know who God is. We're not halted between Him and the world. And you can cry out all you want to when you're in the world. Until you cry out to God, you'll never hear an answer. Period. There's another verse that I want to share with you. 1 Peter 2:9, he says, listen, you're a chosen generation. He's talking to you. A royal priesthood, a holy nation, a peculiar people. And yes, you're weird if you love Jesus. And that's great. That you should show forth praises of Him who has called you out of darkness into His marvelous light. Period. So the challenge goes out. The Lord is God, follow Him. But Baal, follow them. Israel had seen God working in their nation. They'd seen all these things. And the same choice is given by Joshua. The same choice is given by Moses. Joshua says, look, choose this day whom you will serve. It's most popular, probably one of the most popular verses in the Bible. Choose who you're going to serve, whether it be the gods of your fathers, the ones they served on the other side of the flood, or the gods of the Amorites, or whose land ye dwell. But listen to what he says, as for me and my house, we're going to serve the Lord. As for me and my house, we're going to serve God. Deuteronomy 30:19, I can call heaven and earth to record today against you. Listen, I have set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Therefore choose life, so that both of you and your seed may live. Choose life. I want to go back to where they were silent. When Elijah threw this out there, it says, but the people were completely silent. Nobody said a word. And sometimes, silence speaks a lot of volume, I guess you can say. Sometimes it can probably be deafening. Maybe they said nothing out of fear. Maybe they were afraid. There were 450 prophets of Baal. The prophet of Asheroth, King Ahab, and his wife Jezebel. And it was just Elijah by himself. And he made this challenge, and no Nobody said a word. Proverbs 29:25 starts with the fear of man brings a snare. Some said it may be nothing out of compromise. Some said, I don't want to create trouble. I just want to get along. And John 14:6 says, Jesus said to them, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man come to the Father but by me. Some said nothing out of ignorance. Some raised their families in either ways that had mixed worship or didn't worship at all, and leaving them ignorant to the truth. There was a thing on the Jay Leno show not too awful long ago that, I forgot what he calls it, where he does the man on the street interviews, where they go out and interview people. Anybody ever seen that, where Jay Leno does that? Yeah, and one night he collared some people and he asked the question, can you name one of the 10 Commandments? And he asked two college-age women, and one replied, freedom of speech. He asked another to complete this sentence, let he who is without sin, her response was, have a good time. He asked another young man, he says, according to the Bible, who was eaten by a whale? And really confident in his answer, he said, Pinocchio. That's the world we live in. Talking about the ignorance of silence. Look, this is what it is. Elijah challenged them to choose. He challenged them to choose who they would serve. Those prophets of Baal cried out. They did all they could do to no avail. When you live for the world, it's going to go by so fast you're going to miss all the blessings that God has for you. You're going to cry out. You're going to reach out. You're going to try to do everything in your power to make things work, and it's not going to work because God's not in it. You have to choose God and say, this is the deal. When you choose God and put God first, all those other things fall into place. I know that sounds backwards. I know it sounds awkward. You have to let Him do it, not you. When you follow Him, He takes care of all those things. That doesn't mean life's going to be just peachy. It's still going to be hard. But you know who you trust in and know who's going to take care of you through it. That's not real hard to understand. It's just hard to believe in it. And all He asks is that we believe. So let me ask you, can you choose God or the world? Because that gray area, what was it the guy says, fine as a frog hair. You're either on one side or the other side. You can't be right in the middle. So you have to choose who you're going to serve. Would you guys pray with me this morning? Father, there's times in all of our lives where we have to choose. And sometimes those choices are hard, sometimes they're easy. And Father, we just want to give you the best that we can give you this morning. And that would be to choose you. All the stuff we own, it's just temporary. What we do have is you. And Father, let us find you this morning. Let us cling to you. Let's be on our knees before you, crying out, seeking you. Let your voice, oh God, let your voice ring in our ears. Let it be easy to hear, not complicated, not fast-paced, just you. Father, we try so many things. We try so hard. It seems like sometimes we're just trying to swim upstream and we never can gain any ground. It seems like every time we take a step, it's 2 steps backwards. But I know when you're in it, what it is. And Father, this morning there may be some in this room who have fought the battles. They fought the good fights. But they still struggle. I'll make it easy for them. There may be some in here who know who you are. They know all about you. But they don't know you. Not the way you want them to. There may be some in here that don't have a clue. They've heard things said. They've seen things. They've watched a good movie about you every now and then. but it fails in comparison to knowing you. Let them find you this morning. Not for numbers or anything other than just them and you. Father, would you speak this morning?